Morning guys, thank you for joining me for Walking with the Word. I want to talk about a film today called Finding Dory. Now, just a heads up, if you've not seen the film and you want to, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the film a little bit, but what I'm going to say has got really profound implications for our own spiritual journeys, for our own spiritual walks. And interestingly, I think this film, Finding Dory, has a lot of spiritual truth packed into it. I think we can learn a lot from it about how to move forward with God in our own lives, and I think as I begin to share the narrative, you might feel like you can relate to Dory, that there's a little bit of Dory in you, or it may well be that you don't feel like Dory at the moment, but you know someone who is a bit like Dory. And I want to talk through the film and look at some parallels between Dory's story and our story. So we're going to talk about some aspects of the film. So Dory is this really tiny, cute little fish at the beginning of the film with big eyes, and Dory's parents are looking after her, and they're trying to teach Dory that she has short-term memory loss. She keeps forgetting things, and the parents obviously are quite worried about her, so she's living on this beautiful reef, and they don't want Dory to swim too far away from them, because what they're worried about is if she does, she'll just get lost. She can't remember anything, and she's just, you know, she's lost from moment to moment because her memory is so bad. So they are lovingly teaching her that she's got short-term memory loss, trying to teach her boundaries, trying to keep her safe to them in the reef, you know, close to them in the reef, in a safe place. But little Dory has an adventurous heart, and although she loves being around her parents, occasionally she sees a bigger fish swimming by and shooting along, and she wants to go and join them, and she wants to go and play with them. She wants to explore the undertow. So it's quite a dangerous combination. She's got short-term memory loss and an adventurous spirit. She wants to go out and explore, and she's enticed by things that she sees around her. So of course the inevitable happens, and one day we suddenly jump from seeing Dory safe and in the protection and presence of her parents to drifting around in the ocean, not sure where she is or even what happened, how she got separated, and she's just kind of lost, and she's asking around, and at times you see that she kind of has this notion of what she's looking for. She'll say, "I've lost my parents, I'm not sure where they are," and she'll start a conversation with someone. Then she'll even forget the beginning of the conversation, and I think it can be like this with us and God. When people are away from God, when people go on this journey further and further from God in their lives, I think you can kind of forget who God is, and it's like you've got this glimmer, you get these shadows, these kind of bits of who God is. But in the world, our experience of life can be like this at times. We know there's something greater, we feel it, we sense it, we want it, but we don't know what it is, and we don't know how to find it. And we just feel so lost, and as Dory's kind of swimming around in the ocean, she's got the sense of something as well. She feels lost. She knows there's something else. At times she even knows it's her parents that she's looking for, but she doesn't get very far, and she goes round, and of course she does what any little lost fish should do, and she goes round and she asks for help, and she's constantly going up to people and saying, "Help, I've lost Mummy and Daddy, can you help me?" And these big fish come over, and some of them are really caring, some of them really want to help her, but they don't know how to help her because they don't know what her parents look like, and they can barely continue a conversation because by the time she's gone some length into the conversation, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, she can't remember what she's talking about. So you see these compassionate fish that want to help, but no one can help her. And again, I think this can be like our spiritual journey. Sometimes people want to help us, but they don't know what help we need, and they don't know what we're looking for, so they can't actually be of help to us. But other fish obviously want to harm her, so some want to help her, some want to harm her. And again, it can be like this in our spiritual journeys. If we're estranged from God, we don't know him deeply or personally, we've moved away from him in our lives, sometimes you'll actually find people who you think want to help you, and you'll go out to seek their help, but really their motivation is wrong. They want to harm you, and poor little Dory with short-term memory loss hasn't she's very vulnerable, and there's a sense of her not knowing how to spot this and then getting herself into trouble because she gets too close to these harmful fish. So again, think of this as a parallel in our own spiritual lives when we're lost from God. So I think some of us can find that we get hurt and damaged by people who want to harm us. And the third thing in the story is that the more Dory looks to find her parents, the more lost she gets. And again, I think it can be like this for us when we get separated from God. The further we get from him, we can actually get ourselves into more of a mess looking for him. We can try and search for him in all sorts of places and find that we just get into more of a tangle, more of a mess, more distant, more estranged. And it's interesting, isn't it, how that can happen. And as I say, this may be you personally. Maybe you feel like you're Dory in the middle of the ocean, lost, you know, carried around by currents, threatened by scary fish, with a few nice fish who want to help you out there. Or maybe you just know someone who's like this. And either way, I think we can learn from little Dory some of the characteristics of being lost in the ocean and what it feels like and what dangers there are out there. But as Dory searches, she just gets herself more and more lost until she finds herself in a really sort of dark spot. And in this dark spot, she's lost. She's even lost any friends she's found along the way. It's confusing. It's dark. But in the darkest place, she begins to feel peace, and she begins to explore her environment, and she says, right, what should I do? I should look around me. And on the seabed floor, she sees this little shell, and she's drawn in, and she swims up to this shell and looks at it. She's like, oh, that's interesting. I like that shell. And then she swims along and notices another one. She's like, oh, another shell. I like that one too. And she swims a bit further, and oh, another one. And she just keeps following these shells, shell after shell after shell, and there's this kind of draw to her. She's drawn in by the shells, and as she swims along, what you see is these trails of shells converging on this kind of old sunken pot on the bottom of the ocean. It's like they're all just bringing her or kind of into this central part, and she's like, what's going on here? And then she turns around and she sees her parents, and they're both swimming along, dropping these shells, and they see her, and obviously they swim towards each other, and they have a fishy hug, and they have a fishy cry. I'm not sure what crying under the water looks like, but it's this beautiful emotional moment where this lost child is reunited with her parents finally. She's grown a bit bigger, and her parents look a little bit older, but the love you see between them, that passion, that joy in the moment of like, we're reunited. And you can see little Dory's like, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been looking for. And when you move away from God, whether that's even temporarily for a short time, or if you're away from him for a season, maybe you've never feel like you've known God in your life, but you know something's out there, someone's out there, and you come back to God and you get that moment, that embrace, that love, that moment of finding. It's so beautiful. And seeing Dory kind of having that fishy moment with her parents too, it spoke to me about how God is like this. God, the way he embraces us and delights, and the way you see all that effort that he's been going to through our lives to save us and to bring us by setting these shells down. And I want to bring this in with the Bible and talk about the similarity between this story and the Bible, because I'm claiming that there's some parallels here between Dory's journey and our spiritual journeys. And actually, I think there is, and I think there's a few Bible verses that jump out to me that lay down some principles. And I want to start off by looking at Ecclesiastes 3:11. And in Ecclesiastes 3:11, it tells us God has set eternity in the hearts of man. And I don't think that means that God's put eternity just in the hearts of Christians or any particular religion. I think all human beings have a sense of the eternal. We all have a sense that there's something greater than this life. There's an eternal life out there. Now, some people use this as an argument to say, oh, well, you only believe because you're kind of hardwired to believe. It's maybe they'll just play it off as a kind of hopeful belief. We wish we could live for eternity, so that's why we believe it. And that's why people make religions up. Some people will say there's some kind of hardwiring going on, and it's like a kind of hopefulness. But I actually think that's not correct. I think eternity is in our hearts, but I think the reason eternity is in our hearts is because God's put eternity in our hearts. We're basically created to enjoy eternity. Oh, the branches get a bit low here, but we're going to keep moving. I believe we're created for eternity. God has set eternity in our hearts for a reason, because he wants to bring us back to himself. There's a sense of the eternal, and that drawing sense to the eternal is something genuinely put there by God, because he loves us and he wants to know us. I want to look at John 12:32 next. Jesus, talking to his disciples, says, when I am raised up, talking about after I've died, I'm going to be ascended again. When I'm raised up, I will draw all men to myself. There's a kind of universal drawing. There's a universal appeal. God really is trying to pull people in to himself. That's not just God in a general sense. This is God the Father revealed through Jesus Christ, who wants to know us. Jesus is not just saying there's a kind of general drawing towards some kind of religion or God. No, I will draw all men to myself. God, who's decisively revealed through Jesus, is drawing people, pulling people in. He wants to know people, and that's what I take from that verse in John. And the last verse is in Acts 17:27, when Paul is speaking. He says that God has placed people in various situations and various circumstances with various boundaries and borders, and he's kind of put everyone into the positions that they're in, so that some may seek him and reach out for him and find him, though he's not far from any of us. And I love the way Paul describes this. There's just so much captured in this verse in Acts. So the first thing is that God puts people into the situations they're in. God allows us to enter into certain situations and circumstances. God puts us in those, but he does it with a view not to hide himself from people, but that people might start seeking for him. And there's a two-way seeking thing going on here, because the Bible tells us that God seeks and saves the lost. The Bible tells us that there's some initiative from God, but it also in this verse says that God's placed us in situations to encourage us to seek him, because it's when we seek him that we reach out for him, and that's where we find that saving relationship with him. That's where we find that deep eternal relationship. It's where we have that reconciliation and hug that we saw Dory having with her parents. So it says that he places us in those situations. Why? So we may seek him, and not just seek him, but when we seek him, reach out for him. There's that human heart response, that free choice to say, God, I want to know you. I reach out for you. So I think that's a really beautiful verse. And then just that final affirmation is not really that far from any of us. And the point here is we have to start looking. We see that when Dory's on her journey, she's looking around, she's looking for the trail of shells, she's trying to find her parents. Excuse me, my voice is going slightly. These are rough and raw, unedited, so I'm sorry for that. Yeah, so she's on a journey, and the main thing that we have to do is we have to look as well. We're on a spiritual journey too. Now at the end of the film, and I love this, it shows Dory as a tiny little fish again, something that she'd completely forgotten, something that she was unaware of, but her parents are training her to follow shell trails, and you see her kind of swimming along after these few shells, and the parents resetting her and doing it again and again and again, just to get it deep into her mind, deep into her heart, that she follows shell trails. And you just think, wow, if her parents hadn't done that, would she have been bothered about that shell on the sea floor? Would she have swum along the trail in that kind of interested way? They set something deep inside Dory. They put something in her that led her to seek, that led her to follow that shell trail, led her straight back to them. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, I don't know, God, I've no idea what all this is about, but you feel drawn, you feel like there's a shell trail in your life, there are things that are pointing you in a direction, let me encourage you. That shell trail is pointing you towards Jesus, and that shell trail is pointing you towards the greatest reunion of your life. That shell trail is pointing you towards your Father in heaven who loves you. And yeah, I just encourage you to follow it. If that's talking to you, if you feel like this is describing your spiritual journey, also reach out, drop me a comment. I'd love to encourage you, pray for you. So I hope this has been a helpful video today. I'm going to check out now and see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.